for Nick Saban, he knows this kid. He understands the circumstance better than anybody. But for some people, it may not feel like it fits the crime. But then again, we don't know what the crime actually was. What went down. All we know is what we're reading about, what we're hearing. And as Alabama fans, we trust our coach. As Auburn fans and other SEC fans, they're probably going to be critical about it, thinking that it's not a tough enough sentence for what's happening right now, and it doesn't send the right message. And I think they're all can be valid points. It's a great discussion. We'll continue on. And I think Frank in Homewood wants to go back to another topic, though, about recruiting that we were talking early in the show. Frank, good morning. Welcome into the opening drive.
Yeah, I'm sorry to deviate, from your track on domestic violence, but Frank, I caught part of y'all's discussion earlier where Frank had said that, some of these, I guess, 3- and 4-star players would be best suited to look around, at some of the smaller schools for some options for playing time, and you guys were debating that a little bit, and I don't think that you have to go too much farther than this recent transfer with Seidel Corley out of LSU to Troy, and, he basically said, there's nothing that LSU can offer me that Troy can't except, more playing time and more exposure. And, if you look at Troy, for example, I'm not too familiar with UAB, but I'm sure, a lot of the smaller schools are the same way. Troy has plenty of players on all these watch lists, right? They've got 3 defensive players on Lombardi list alone. And I have to think that those players wouldn't have gotten that exposure if they would have played at, Alabama or Georgia or Tennessee, like DeMarcus Ware, right? This guy was not a highly recruited guy. I mean, he was maybe a 3-star, but, he developed well at Troy, and so those players that maybe ride the pine, right, at Alabama or whatever, they should look out and look at these other schools. I mean, for other reasons than just that. I mean, if you look like at Troy and Alabama, the schedule, I mean, Alabama makes it to the championship game against Florida this year, they'll play 4 of the same teams, right? You got your Florida International, North Texas, and Arkansas, I guess, and they're in Florida. So, there's other advantages, too, to the smaller schools. Like they're not afraid, or I don't want to say afraid, or it's okay for them to go out of conference and play other schools. Like at Troy, you can play Ohio State, right, or Nebraska, or Florida State, Georgia Tech, whatever. Alabama, it's SEC, and then, your cream puff schedule. So, I mean, there's a lot of good things. I guess I'm siding with Frank here. I appreciate that.
Need all the help I can get.
So, as far as pipelines,
it's just because your name's Frank is what it is. Frank is that part of it. I'm messing with you. Yeah, Frank. All right, Frank, thanks for your call. Let's go to Rich and Hoover. Rich, good morning. Welcome in the opening drive.
Morning, guys. Go Balls, Tony.
Go Balls!
There you go. Hey, well, I can see what it looks like.
127.5. Thank you very much.
I can see what it looks like from a Tennessee fan's perspective. I mean, you got to realize, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you got to realize an Alabama fan base that's attacked Fulmer for years about discipline. And this is a coach that kicked off tons of great players. Ontario Smith, Lynn Magruder, James Banks, Derek Locke, Victor McClure. Victor McClure got in a fight on a pickup basketball game where there's a 50-50 chance he didn't even start the fight and got kicked off the team. And then here in Alabama, you've got people getting suspended for a half and or domestic violence and not getting suspended at all. And the David Palmer example is a classic case. I mean, their people's lives were put at risk twice. I mean, I think, but then the comments come out that you without sin throw the first stone, and it's in the kid's best interest, and the worst thing we can do. I mean, it's major spin cycle, and it's spin. I mean, you can always find an angle to justify keeping a great player on your football team, But when it's somebody else, where's that perspective when it's Tennessee? And here's Fulmer kicking people off. He's still getting the heat from it. So it smacks of hypocrisy from where I'm sitting.
How do you think Lane Kiffin is going to handle it?
So far, he hasn't had anybody arrested, but I don't know how to handle it. But I've said for years on this station, and there needs to be a code of conduct for the conference. I mean, there's a conflict of interest when head coaches are distributing discipline to players. You'll have things like you did with Urban Meyer, cherry-picking a game off the schedule to suspend the player for. It's not fair to those teams that do take discipline seriously. And I don't understand why we couldn't have a code of conduct You know, if you commit domestic violence, you're suspended for 3 games or whatever. And that way, it takes it out of the hands of the coaches who have an interest in making it and letting these guys play. Yeah, but
all right, Rich.
Thanks, guys. Go off.
Hey, and to correct you real quick, that was Ron Zook. If I didn't say that, the guy behind the glass would get mad. You know, that's a real good point. There are a lot of things he said, but I think it's a tough situation for any coach, considering, you know, the ramifications of what allegedly happened or what actually happened in certain situations. And I mean, I think Coach Saban is probably trying to handle it the best way he can, which is giving it this time to actually play itself out instead of just making a ruling. All right, we'll continue the thoughts on the other side. And don't forget also coming up next hour, Bone Fragment.